What are we talking about, Mohsin?
We're talking about the formula of life.
So I was thinking we could be inspirational.
All right. I had a dream. I have a dream. Not had a dream. I had a dream, but now I've given up on it.
You sound like you just... I had a really weird dream. I was trying to understand what it meant.
Go on. We'll do interpretation.
I was essentially arranging food. I was like delivering stuff to my mother-in-law, like food, I think it was.
I think I know what that means, but I'll have to tell you off camera.
All right, okay, fair enough. Right, folks. Well, this is an unexpected pleasure to have Mohsin Patel here in London, and we thought we'd hang out and we'd talk about something. We scratched our heads and we thought the thing that we are definitely authorities on talking about is how to survive your 20s, because we are now both officially past our 20s.
Yeah.
And
sadly.
Yeah, very sad. But Mohsin, what do you reckon? What's your pearls of wisdom that you would give people who are currently in their 20s?
Yeah. So I think the way that when you get to like your 30s, you're getting towards that middle age, aren't you? And I think that there's like a formula. There's like a formula to your life and the stages of life. The time from GCSE, probably the next like 10 or so years after that are absolutely critical, because you go from a school kid literally to a fully functional, probably responsible perhaps for a family adult. So there's a lot that you pack in to that time.
Agreed completely. The way I think about it is that you're a bit of a young pup from about 16, where you actually realize, hang on, I've got responsibilities other than messing around in a classroom.
Yeah.
And then you start dabbling, but I think by the time you get to 21, especially after you leave university, I think of that phase as like the setup phase.
Yeah.
For your big thing. Like the big thing, I think really you're going to be properly tooled up for it by the time you're about 30.
Yeah.
And from about 30 to about 50, you've got a clear run of a couple of decades in which to do damage, because at that age you still are young enough to kind of have the energy to be able to do stuff, whilst also someone experienced enough to be able to do it well. But then after 50, I think it's game over.
I won't go that far. Poor 50 plus viewers are like, damn, it's game over. No, I think I broadly agree with that. I think there's a few things important, I think, to bear in mind. I think when we talk about tooling up, what does that actually mean? I think for me, and probably very similar for you, I think for us it meant uni and like choice of uni, choice of kind of career. But then I think crucially what you do outside of that kind of mainstay, because the majority of people will do uni, career, family, for example. Like, I think it's probably the mainstay of most people. But it's like what are you doing on the edges of these things?
Yeah. And
your 20s are a really good time to experiment with this stuff, particularly like before you're married and kids, because you've actually got the time to be experimenting.
Agreed. I think it's also about what you care about. So different people are different. Maybe there's a few big buckets of people. There's the bucket of people who care about the prestige of what they're doing and the stability aspect. And I guess for them, doing the uni and the corporate or the professional route probably makes more sense. But even there, if you want to get ahead in your career, it's really important to do extracurricular stuff. But then you've got other people, probably we're in that bucket, which is, you've got the entrepreneur types, or people who want to kind of do other things, even as their day job. And again, for people like this, I think it's important that you still have a setup phase, because otherwise you're just going to be this berserker character at the age of 22 with no experience about anything, with loads of rough edges. I do feel like it's important to go through this kind of this purifying,
polishing
process of having to work really hard and getting shouted at in a corporate environment.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that's important. I think for us, obviously we were both in corporate law, where I think it's a great environment to kind of ply your trade. You have to learn quite a lot of skills around, getting a lot of shouting at from partners, working super late, working really hard, juggling, different kind of deals that you might be working on, like, the whole kind of skill set there. So I think corporate law is a really cool one. I think the other interesting thread to think about is, what are like the interesting things particular to your time period, and what can you quickly become a bit of an expert in almost, because we've kind of grown up in a time where the web and like technology and all that kind of stuff was coming around for the first time almost, and you will encounter that in your life. Like there will be times where you are an early adopter of something, and actually if you get in there pretty quick, you're one of the foremost experts in that thing, kind of unwittingly almost. Agreed
completely. And I feel like people often don't take the risk that comes with that, where you're staking your colors to a mast to something that's a bit, laughable perhaps at that stage. But the thing is, that's the stage that you want to be staking your colors to the mast.
Yeah.
And the kind of things that I think are big next decade trends to think about. Maybe I'll kick off with probably your favorite, Mohsin, which is crypto.
Yeah.
But then I think there's a bunch of others like AI, robotics, quantum technology, quantum computing. I think it's fascinating. I think the emerging world. There's also like this trend of shifting power from the West to the East happening. So there's a whole load of really macro level mega trends going on. And if you can just jump onto one or two of them and become a domain expert in them, just by the sheer weight of the the movement behind you, you'll probably end up doing quite well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I think what we should do now is maybe talk about some, I guess, like quick fire lessons. And one thing I was thinking of as you were saying that, Ibrahim, is that one kind of lesson I've learned over like the last 10 years is that you want to be speaking to lots of different people in lots of different areas, because all those like different trends you were saying, it's not one person that's going to be like, oh, there's all these trends. You'll get a feel for the different trends in different spaces by talking to different people. So if people talk to us nowadays, they'll get a very kind of financy side of things. But if I talk to like a certain friend who's massively interested in like, I don't know, politics or history, I'll get like a completely different side of the world. And what you often find is that the more people you talk to, you've got to be a bit of a generalist. So you've got to kind of pick different things from different places, put your own kind of spin on it from things you've learned, and then kind of draw your own conclusions, and then start going deep on something.
Yeah, I mean, by the same token, you can also, I think, some people would much prefer being a specialist as well.
Yeah.
And that's also fine. You can just pick one thing that you really care about and then just become really nerdy about it and just be great at it.
Yeah.
But the point about talking to people, I think, is a really valuable one, because, if you just aim for one coffee with someone random, ideally someone who's more advanced in their career or success, quote unquote, and just do that over a year, that's 50 people in your network that you now have that you wouldn't otherwise have. And if you do that over a decade, that's 500 people that are were more influential than you when you initially talked to them, that you now have in your network. And networks are just so important for basically anything in your life.
Yeah.
What are the benefits you've had, Mohsin, from your network?
Networks, it's one of those things where when you're early on in your it sounds quite scary, like, oh, I'm not a networker, I don't do these kinds of things or whatever, but it's actually really straightforward. And I think one of the lessons that we've both learned over the last 10 years or so is that growing your network isn't about, oh, I need to go to this event and I need to circle the room and I need to hand out business cards. Like, it's not that at all. You need to be doing what you said, like try and just talk to different people in different areas. And the crucial thing is you need to add value to them, or try to add value to them in some way. And when you're young and inexperienced, you kind of think, oh, how am I going to add value? But actually you can add value just by in some ways just being enthusiastic, and actually just being like engaging, and actually, you know, listening to people, following their advice, and telling them about, you know, what you've done. You know, you'd be surprised how willing actually people are to help, and, you know, alhamdulillah, we've kind of seen the benefits of doing that as well. I think other lessons, you know, really practical ones, especially in kind of the corporate career, are one definitely that I kind of learned is that in some ways you have to be quite bold and risky, and almost not kind of succumb to the internal politics of a place, and really just kind of assert yourself. Because I've noticed that the people that do that, they tend to get a lot more respect.
Yeah, I've just got an image of you, you know, like a lion marking his territory.
In a law firm office.
Visiting like the various different plant pots or something.
I can assure you I wasn't doing that.
So yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I've completely lost my thread now after this visceral image I have of you. Yeah, I think on the confidence point, you know, I feel like people dramatically overestimate how much they will lose if they do stuff that is, you know, outside of their comfort zone, or the kind of confrontational, or there's, you know, some kind of level of discomfort to it. And actually most people, they realize that, you know, when you do that, things pretty much always change for the better. It's not, you know, it doesn't really affect you that badly. And so I would say your 20s is a great time to take a good few swings of the bat at things that, you know, perhaps you wouldn't otherwise have done.
Yeah, because there's not actually that much risk associated with it. Like, if you actually think it through, there's not that, other than maybe like a bit of embarrassment or something, there's not actually real risks.
Agreed. Like you're living in if you're living in the UK, if you're living in a social security state, and the net there to catch you if something goes wrong is fantastic. So the upside is just, you know, tremendous. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%.
How do parents then push or encourage a 20-year-old? Because when I was 20, I didn't have a clue.
What would I do? I mean, it's a real question because we're both parents. I think the way that I'm thinking about it is, I guess it kind of starts before 20 ideally, right? So like, what I'm trying to do is expose my kids to do a lot of different and, you know, interesting things. Try to pick up their interest in lots of different areas, because, you know, one of those things they are going to probably latch onto, right? And yeah, that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. So it's not like in their youth, it's not about necessarily becoming an expert. It's about giving them an exposure, I think. But yeah, I guess when you get to 20, it's, you know, they kind of need to start discovering things for themselves as well. If
you're a parent with 20-year-old kids, you know, people in the 20s, and you feel like they're wasting their life a bit, it's very difficult, because, you know, obviously they're now adults, and it's sometimes hard to get through to them. But the way I would probably approach it is by getting them in rooms with other, you know, late 20-year-olds or early 30s, both successful and unsuccessful, and give them examples of what is to come. You know, if they are hardworking, or if they do certain good things, and also if they do certain bad things. You can obviously give them your example as well, but I think sometimes as parents, you know, talking to their kids, it doesn't penetrate as effectively as if they see it from someone else. So that's probably the strategy I would take. Yeah, makes sense. And if all else fails, show them this video. Yeah, show them this video. You need role models. We all need role models. We have role models still. You always want to be looking at people who are, you know, further ahead, or older than you and longer through their career, and then you can learn lots of interesting things from them. So folks, that was a new kind of video that we've never really done before. Me and Mohsin just hanging out, chatting. If you liked it, let us know. And if you want to see more of these videos, then please let us know what kind of topics we should be covering in the future. Assalamu alaikum. So yeah, I think like the age 16 onwards, like GCSEs onwards, probably the next 10 years or so, very, very important.
Too succinct.
That's absurd.
Too brief.
That's actually absurd.
Every single year in your life is very important. Right, let's go again.